Hello everyone and welcome back to another Wizard101 video. With the release of the Barkingham Chronicle update just the other day, we are up to two major Chronicle updates now. We have the Aquila Chronicle update, which added a secret boss, added a new gear set, shuffled around some gear, added a massive pity system, and added some new spells as well. And now we have the Barkingham Chronicle update, which added a completely overpowered theme, a new secret boss, new spells, and added a pity system to the different gear. And I was thinking about those updates and I was like, you know what? Those are pretty cool. And this is two summers in a row now where they've made a Chronicle update. Likely, I imagine they're going to continue doing this in the future. So I was thinking, what is next? What is most likely to get a Chronicle update, and ultimately, should it get a Chronicle update? So that's what I want to do in this video. I want to explore the different past dungeons of the game that I think are most likely to get an update. It's going to go from most likely to least likely in my opinion. And then at the end of the video, I want to wrap it up tightly in a nice little bow, and then go over what I think should get the Chronicle updates most rather than what I think is most likely to. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Now to start off, what exactly makes a Chronicle update and what are the prerequisites for one? Because I feel like that's very important, detailing what I think can get an update rather than actually what should get an update. So let's look at the worlds that have gotten a Chronicle update so far and go from there. First off, for both of them, it is a past dungeon that was released quite a few years ago now that did not have any form of pity system. So looking at Aquila, all of the gear was just dropped from the major bosses. Looking at Barkingham, all of it was dropped from Dr. Jackal. It wasn't spread out between the different bosses of the different areas. It was all just dropped from one source. And again, there was no pity system attached to it. So no crafting involved. You just had to farm it and hope you get what you get. Now, on top of that, I think the second and most major thing is these were minor side areas that were either kind of neglected or hadn't been touched in many, many years. Looking at Aquila, it hadn't been updated at all since 2013. Barkingham Palace hadn't been updated at all since 2014, which means it's been well over a decade since either of those areas have been touched by KingsIsle whatsoever, which means that they felt a little bit neglected. So first off, no pity system. Second off, feels a little bit neglected. Now, I think the final thing that's important for a Chronicle update, and this just really has to do with how they have updated it so far. This isn't to say that they can't change this in the future, but the different areas that have a Chronicle update usually have many different bosses attached to them rather than just one major one. The reason why I think this is important is because how they're doing these pity systems and how they are making it so the trading works, where you need to get a badge from a different boss. From there, you can craft the gear. I think that for all of these major Chronicle updates, there needs to be at least a few separate bosses, because if there isn't, they can't really do the pity system in the current model that we have. This is very important for a few specific worlds that I'm going to list on this list that could use a Chronicle update, because I think it's less likely that they get them because they only have like one major boss, and that means that they're less likely to receive one. So I think that those are all of the major prerequisites for a Chronicle update. Obviously, this is subject to change. KingsIsle could realistically do whatever they want, and they can shift it around however they want. However, that's what I'm going to define it as in this video for the most likely to the least likely. Now let's get into the main video, starting with our first choice for the most likely for the next Chronicle update. All right, for our first location that I think is likely to get a Chronicle update, we are going to go over Zigazag. Now what I'm going to start out with for all of these is I'm going to start out with how I think the pity system would work, and then go into why I think it's so likely. Well, similar to the other Chronicle updates, I imagine that we would get a full set of level 60 spells, so one for each school, with spellments dropped from each of the major bosses, and also rewarded from a badge reward. I think that's just very likely. I think all of them are going to have new spells, and I think it'd be pretty dang cool for a set of level 60 spells. Now, on top of that, I imagine that they would spread out the gear throughout all of the different major bosses throughout Zigazag, and then from there add some kind of badge reward type of crafting, similar to all of the other ones. And there's a recipe vendor right here that they could add new crafting recipes to from a new reagent dropped from all of the different bosses. I think it's just that simple. That's what it would look like. That's what they would add. And I think finally, potentially they would add a new item. This has been pretty consistent throughout. They added the Gorgon gear throughout Aquila. For Barkingham, they did add a new set of gear and the new Queen's Guard Artivista theme. I think it's likely that they add a new item, and specifically, I could imagine them doing like a level 60 ring, because we don't really have a good ring at level 60. Obviously, we have Atavistic, but we don't have like a good universal ring such as the Queen's Guard Artivist. I could see them just like taking the Alpha and Omega ring and plopping it right here in Zigazag. Boom, perfect. Add another side boss like the monster. call it a day. Now you may be asking, Noah, why exactly do you think this is the most likely option for the 2027 Chronicle update? And honestly, I think that's very simple, and that's just the fact that it meets all of the prerequisites perfectly for what we've gotten in the past. First off, Zigazag has no pity system whatsoever. They have multiple different bosses that they could very easily spread the drops throughout. They already have a recipe vendor, and the Zigazag dungeon is very neglected. It released in 2014, hasn't been touched since, and most people haven't farmed the Zigazag gear in many years now, outside of the robe potentially, and even the robe nowadays is pretty bad with the release of the Gorgon gear. So Zigazag has kind of been invalidated. Now on top of that, however, I think there is one more thing, and this is kind of the final nail in the coffin that made me believe this, and that's the fact that for some reason, KingsIsle is obsessed with level 60. You may have noticed just recently in the last few years, they have added a lot of level 60 gear sets, a lot of updates for level 60, and I think that's just because KingsIsle really likes this level. For example, they completely revamped Celestia, added the Atavistic gear, they just changed the Gorgon gear, added that level 60 gear as well. There is Zigazag, the Tower of the Helephant, Waterworks. There is a lot of different areas for level 60 gear, and I think because of that, it's likely that they just remodel one of the already existing level 60 areas and add a new gear set, or make the gear set more in line with modern gear sets and potentially add some new gear as well. I just think it's very likely that they're like, Zigazag seems like a perfect place to go. Do I personally think that's where they should go? Probably not. I think we have enough level 60 gear in the game right now that they could just totally skip Zigazag and potentially remodel it years down the line rather than next year. But again, I think Zigazag is just the most likely next option. For our next most likely dungeon, we have one that aligns with, not only do I think it's very likely that they do it, but I also agree fully that they should do it, and that is Castle Darkmoor. Now, Castle Darkmoor honestly already meets all of the points perfectly. Again, it has been a long time since they've updated this dungeon. All the way back in 2014 is when they've released it. They haven't touched it at all since. On top of that, already the different drops are spread throughout different bosses, which means all they need to do to update this to add a pity system is simply make it so that each of the different bosses has a different badge attached to them, and then from that badge you can craft the gear. Boom, easiest thing in the world. Honestly, that would be amazing. On top of that, there's already a recipe vendor over here where you can craft the decks, so it's already like there's kind of a half pity system here. It's just not nearly as good as the modern pity systems, so there is that. And then finally, for these spells, there's already spells attached to it. So it's kind of like there's already Darkmoor Chronicle spells. It's just that they weren't called that back in the day. The Shadow Infused spells exist. All they would need to do is add spell element paths to them, and boom, perfect. There you go. Like just looking at it right here with Mystic Colossus, we have Mystic Colossus. All they would need to do is add spell elements drop for it and add a full 5 tiers. Boom, there you go. You got your Darkmoor Chronicle spells in the bag. Now, like I said at the very beginning, I think that not only is this a very likely option, and I could see them doing this in the next 2 years, this is also an incredibly needed option. Specifically, if they don't touch any of the Darkmoor gear really and just kind of add a pity system to it, I think that would be perfect because of the fact things such as the Yevgenia theme, which is an incredibly good theme at level 100, if they added like a defeat Yevgenia 15 or 20 times to it and then added the ability to craft it with a new reagent, it would be incredibly beneficial because the Yevgenia theme is currently best in slot at level 100, no contest, and a lot of people already do the Darkmoor dungeon just for the Yevgenia theme. You see a lot of people nowadays in the graveyard, go into the graveyard, beat Yevgenia, and then leave, which by the way is a very rude thing to do, but I think that that would mostly be stopped if KingsIsle added it so that there was a pity system and you didn't need to just farm Yevgenia over and over for that theme. If you made it so that you only had to beat him like 15 times and you could craft it, things would go a lot better. Now on top of that, that would also be obviously useful for Wysteria the Undying in of itself. The Shane Von Shane amulets would be really good, and if they really wanted to, I don't think that they necessarily even need to do this or they should do this, but they could remodel some of the gear and bring it up to snuff because a lot of the gear is kind of a little bit outdated nowadays. I just made my level 100 gear guide yesterday, and in that video I kind of went over the fact that Castle Darkmoor has kind of fallen out of fashion. The Darkmoor gear is not nearly as good as it used to be. All they would need to do is shift around a few things, like make the hats and boots a little bit better, potentially make the Shane Von Shane amulet give a different type of slot. I think circle slot would be a bit much for it, but if they added a triangle slot to it, I think automatically Shane Von Shane amulet would be crazy good nowadays. On top of that, they could make the decks easier to get and add like a circle slot deck if they wanted to, since there is no level 100 circle slot deck that gives a pip. I think that all of those things would be incredibly easy to add, and it would change Darkmoor massively for the better. So not only do I think it's likely, but I also think it's very much needed. This is probably the one I would want want the most out of literally all of them. All right, for our next one, let me just start off by saying this one is very unfortunate because of the fact that I think it's very likely that at some point they do a Chronicle update here. However, I don't think no matter what they do, they could ever make me want to do Kemaalung Village. It's just simply not worth it, and they would have to completely remodel it or potentially even change what level you go here for me to even think it's a good idea to do it. So while this is one that I think is likely, this is one that I don't think that they should do whatsoever. Now, why exactly do I think it's likely they do Kemaalung Village? Well, very similar to Castle Darkmoor and Zigazag, it is part of the Tale of Four Dungeons. It's been since 2014 since they've released it. There is many different bosses scattered throughout that they could scatter different drops throughout, and there is no pity system whatsoever, and if they added a pity system, it would probably make the gear a little bit more valuable. However, the problems with Kemaalung Village, this gear set kind of sucks because the Zeus gear in 5 levels, yes, 5 levels, which is probably about 30 minutes of questing, is just simply outclassing it in every single sense. The hat, robe, and boots are just incredible. The wand, the Skyrim Host is better. There is no real Athame ring. The only thing Kemaalung Village has going for it is for balance. The amulet gives an item card feint, which is obviously incredible for feint stacking. But outside of that, Kemaalung Village has nothing. Now, obviously, with a Chronicle update, they could make it so it does have something. They could remodel the gear completely, make it more comparable to the Zeus gear, and potentially add a new set of spells, whatever. I just don't think that they should. I think that this is one, again, that they are likely to do, but do I think they should do it? No, not really. So I'm just gonna leave this one here, a nice and short one, because again, I really don't like the idea of this, but I think it's likely that they do it. All right, next up, we have probably the most interesting one on this list, because this one, in my opinion, is the one that they are very unlikely to do. However, this is one that I think needs it the most. So like on a scale, it's like very unlikely, however, needs it a lot. And that is the Catacombs. I think the Catacombs is the perfect spot for a Chronicle update and for them to completely remodel an area and make it more in line with the modern pity systems, because the Dragoon gear, the Catacombs gear, is honestly pretty dang good. But the problem with it is that it sucks so much to farm, and the pity system that's in the game is absolutely horrible. So I think that the Catacombs could very, very easily see a complete remodeling to be more in line with the new Chronicle update. All they would need to do, add a potential level 130 spell, pretty cool. That would be interesting, something to farm, something that would give 130s another thing to get them away from the Blade and AoE meta. I think that would be pretty cool. Add a different badge requirement to the Catacombs. Like for example, instead of all of these badges, defeat them once, make them so it's defeat them 5 times or defeat them 10 times. Sure, that would suck for some of them, like nobody wants to defeat the Devourer 10 times, but if they made it very lenient, like the modern Darkmoor badges, so it's only like 5 times for some of these, I could see the Dragoon gear being crafted way more. Also, I think a very good way to do this would be to remove the alchemical salt and alchemical crystal reagents, just make it alchemical extract and make the extract drop from way more bosses. Then from there, you can just craft the Dragoon gear a lot easier. They could also, if they really wanted to, remodel the Dragoon gear, because honestly, the Dragoon gear kind of sucks. Outside of that set bonus with the amulet, boots, and hat, the rest of it is bad. The robe uses the old robe model, the robe model that does not have damage whatsoever. They could completely change that. The wand is simply just a little bit worse than like the legendary wands you can get at level 130 from the crafted gear, like the revered gear. The Athames don't have power pip chance at all. That means these Athames right here are pretty much rivaled by the Queensguard Artifice. I mean, look at this. The Dragoon Icy Dagger, the ice one, is literally worse than the Queensguard Artifice. It has almost the exact same amount of damage with no power pip. It's just bad. For the rings, you could add power pip as well. I don't know why there isn't power pip on the rings. That's a little bit insane. So my point is, completely remodel the Catacombs. I think that this one is really sad to me because the Catacombs, I think, has potential. While I think the bosses might be a little bit too difficult and a little bit too asinine to do, I think if they shifted the bosses slightly, if they added a pity system, changed how the current pity system worked completely, maybe add some spells as well, boom, the Catacombs suddenly becomes popping again. The Catacombs suddenly becomes farmable, and now we don't have that massive gap where between level 100 and level 150, there are no gear sets worth farming. If they fixed the Dragoon gear, that would instantly make it so that we have a level 130 gear set that would be very beneficial for the state of the game. So this one I think is unlikely. However, I think it is needed more than almost any other Chronicle update, and I would love to see it appear in like say the 2028 Chronicle update. All right, next up and finally, we have, in my opinion, the least likely area to get a Chronicle update but could still get one, and that is Wysteria. Wysteria is very unfortunate in my opinion because of the fact that while this could use a Chronicle update and could use use a major gear set added to it. I think it would be great for Wysteria and the state of the world. This one I just don't think is likely, because to actually do it, they would have to completely add a new expansion to the world and completely remodel the world as a whole. The reason why is that there is only one major boss in all of Wysteria, and that's Lord Bramble at the very end. Otherwise, outside of that, there's Lord Graustark over here, which I don't think can even be constituted as a major boss. And then there's the people in the tournament, which I'm pretty sure you can't refight and aren't even considered to be bosses. So in Wysteria, yes, I think it would be really good if they added like a full set of Wysteria spells. If they added like a new gear set around level 25 to 30, if they added a potential pity system for that gear set, added a new side quest, whatever, all of these things would be really good. I just don't see them doing it, because I think they would have to completely add a new expansion to Wysteria. However, I do have an idea for what they could do, and this is a completely other video in of itself. I think they could add an expansion to Wysteria and have you go back multiple different times throughout the game, and from there add different gear sets for that level that you can farm, add a pity system for those, add a Chronicle update for those. That would be incredibly good, because Wysteria, in my opinion, is a world of very untapped potential. This world is only like 25 to 30 quests long, and realistically, again, only has like 6 fights, and 4 of those are elite enemies and not bosses. A Chronicle update, in my opinion, it's more likely that they revisit one of the other worlds that I recommended instead. All right, that was my list of worlds that I think could use a Chronicle update in order from most likely to least likely. However, just to wrap this up nicely, let me go over which ones I think need it the most, which is a very, very different list. I think right at the top is going to be Castle Darkmoor, followed by the Catacombs. I think both of those areas could use a Chronicle update more than anything in this game. I think that while Zigazag is way more likely, it just simply doesn't need one. We don't need another level 60 gear set. What we do need is to make level 100 a little bit easier and a little bit more lenient on gear, and 130 just needs a gear set in general, because the Dragoon gear is so hard to farm that nobody farms it nowadays. Everyone just skips it and goes to Merciless. So they could completely remodel the Catacombs, change the gear set in of itself, and make it way better than it currently is. Following that, I would love to see an expansion for Wysteria. Again, I think it is very unlikely, and I honestly don't even see them doing it, but that would be my next up for one that needs it the most, then followed by Zigazag, then followed by Kemaalung. And I think that's pretty much it in regards to my thoughts on those. I think that the Tale of Four Dungeons, really, they don't need it outside of Darkmoor. However, I think it's a lot more likely that they do those over like the Catacombs or Wysteria. So that is pretty much going to be it for this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on what you think needs a Chronicle update, and beyond that, is there anything I missed? Is there any major dungeon that you think could use a Chronicle update? I would love to see what you have to say in the comments below, but otherwise, that's pretty much going to be it for today. If you enjoyed, make sure to drop a like at the sub button. You can also join and become a channel member if you want to. If not, that's fine as well. But thank you all for watching. I will see you in the next video. Have a good one.